Okay, I just want to give a little video on how we do the streaming at our church. We wanted a system that was two-way, so we have a Zoom system that allows remote presentation into the service, as well as the ability for those people to interact with the service remotely. So it's completely two-way. We wanted to have it easy to operate, simply down to, at least from an operator on the day of the service, to be able to use it. It doesn't really require any serious skill level. It will accommodate someone who is a videographer. They can get very fancy with the way the system works, or it could be someone who just doesn't have the technical aptitude but wants to participate and help. It it accommodates both. So what you have here on the screen now I am remoted in to the system, and what you see is left is the preview, right hand is the program. This is the feed or the view that people on Facebook, Zoom, and YouTube would see. People in the congregation in the church will see the screen, the PowerPoint presentation on the left, that on a projector that's up at the front. And anybody who's on Zoom and speaks with their video on, their video shows up on a 65-inch TV towards the front of the sanctuary. It's actually at the front. So generally in our church, the people who do speak generally speak from a lectern that's on the right hand side. So we place the TV near there just to kind of accommodate that familiarity that people already have. So again, the system is completely two-way. So somebody could be physically standing at the lectern and someone on Zoom could be uh, on at the same time and both be presenting simultaneously, or not simultaneously, but in response to each other or speaking back and forth. It's completely seamless. So we have it on OBS, we have a number of preview monitors along the bottom. Now, this is not something that's built in OBS, although OBS does have a multi-view feature. It's not really conducive to the environment. It needs to have a separate monitor. It can be in a windowed mode, but it's not very helpful, especially since we have a lot of cameras, or not a lot of cameras, a lot of scenes. So what we used is an app, a free one called SourceDoc, which allows you to take scenes within OBS and place them as previews within the view. It's great. So it allowed me to put our four inputs, which are PowerPoint, camera 1 and 2, which are PTZ cameras, and camera 3, which is static wide, plus a view of our Zoom NDI feed that comes in from Zoom rooms. So we use a Blackmagic Quad HDMI capture card. Now, from a user perspective, they can see each camera in a preview, which is great. They can also interact with the camera itself just below each view, and they know that this um, hot presets are available to them and will only affect that camera. And it was just a way to lock them in. It wasn't really easy to do otherwise. And this is the software from, in this case, PTZoptic. We just kind of customized it the HTML a little bit to make it a little bit cleaner. So the user can simply click on a link that they or a view that they want to have, and it will change. They could, in fact, pick the different scenes they want over here. And someone who's more seasoned, of course, they can handle this. But we wanted to take it one step further so that anybody could run it from really anywhere. And so what we did was we integrated PowerPoint, which is our presentation for our verbiage, and allowed it to control OBS. So I'm remote controlled into Zoom computer, or sorry, the PowerPoint computer, which sits right beside our OBS. I'm just going to bring it into view here. So you can see this is currently in presentation mode in PowerPoint, and with the left slide being the active slide, the right slide being the upcoming slide. And then in this section is the presentation notes. And what we do is use the presentation notes to put in commands for that slide to send to OBS when that slide becomes active. And then what that does is now, once we have the positions programmed, and this would be done at the time of building the slide, and we'll go into a little bit more detail, as the user advances the slides through the program as the service is going through, it commands the camera. So they really only need to know one button, and that is the advanced slide button. So I'm going to give you a little demo. If I click, we're at the very beginning of the service. and this is kind of like at the default mode. Once the user powers up everything, they would see essentially this screen. So I'm going to advance the slide. And what you're going to notice is a camera move, camera 2. And you're going to notice this PowerPoint scene be selected. And what this is just kind of get the service ready for streaming, and the user knows that if they click that and nothing happens, there's a little checklist. But again, it says, okay, system's ready. It responded. We're ready to go. So as the service progresses, in this case, we have a few morning announcements. The slide is advanced, and you'll notice now a couple of scenes will happen. It's going to change. You notice the name key appears automatically, no user intervention. Now I'm going to the next slide, and slides are changing. And I think on the next one, this slide disappears. Yeah, so the name key disappears. That's kind of how this goes. So I'm going to go to, I'm just going to advance through these announcements because there's quite a few of them. Now we're getting into the service. So now the system moves the camera. You saw camera 1 move. It's getting prepped. The next scene is a PowerPoint, shows up, goes to camera 3, shows it as a wide view. Camera 2 just moved, getting preparation. You notice how these cameras, for the most part, are moving without being live, which is what I'm trying to avoid, is a camera movement, unnecessary camera movement while the camera is active. If I can do it in the background, just have these shots move, lined up and ready to go, then that, I think, makes a cleaner view. So now I'm going to go, so you'll see that camera 1 moved, camera 2 moved. So I'm going to advance the slide to the next slide. And John Smith, speaking for camera 1, has automatically made it go live, and the verbiage appears. And also the verbiage that's on the PowerPoint are on screens that are mounted on the lectern and pulpit at the church. And people in the sanctuary see the PowerPoint on a projector again. So what we have now is we're kind of servicing at least 2 different systems for trying to service the view for the people in the building and the people remotely, simultaneously, with one button. So now the next one will be, example will be a hymn come up. So the hymn comes up, and what you see now is the blue, yellow, or white text you can see in the PowerPoint. People in the church see the blue background PowerPoint up on the projection screen for the word, so it's very clear for them. And then the viewers remotely will see the text only on top of cameras, and that's just to make it look a little bit prettier for the viewers at home. And as I advance through the slides, what can happen now is from an operation point of view, someone who doesn't really want to get into touching the system, this shot is static. But if you are someone who wants to, who's kind of seasoned with it, you can go into the camera. You could say, listen, I need it to, I'm in the preview mode, of course. So I go to choir, and you'll notice there this choir loft move. I'm gonna move this one here, choir loft. So you'll see this camera move. As soon as I do that, they can hit fade, fades over. Now, what will happen next with as the operator may be changing scenes, as they advance the slide, notice that even though I've selected camera 2 and I have it up, the slide's going to say, hey, I need to reset the camera views because of the next speaking parts. So it'll automatically change. It may reposition cameras to a location that we need. And then what will happen at that point is that the system's taken over, and now the viewing is returned to normal. So let's talk about how we're doing this within PowerPoint idea. So within PowerPoint, this is the presentation view. The commands are through a macro. And we've written a macro that runs, I shouldn't say we've modified a macro anyway that was written by Michael Kordahi. It's great. And what it does is it reads the first line of the notes file and then parses it and sends commands to OBS. And we use OBS WebSockets to have a remote system send a command to an OBS system. So I'll give you a breakdown of the code and then how it works. Again, there's some VBA script declaring variables, but this is the key bit of the code is is reading the current slide that's active and then parsing out, in our case, the first 11 characters of the first line. Then the system says, does these first characters start with a CMD dash? If it does, then it knows that there's a command line here that needs to follow. If it does not, then just ignores it and stop. It doesn't run anymore until the next slide advanced. So if it does find the command, what it does is parse out the line to get the first command and the second command. We allow 2 commands in this code per PowerPoint slide. Then it sends the command as a batch file that we've programmed. So it fires off the batch file for command 1 and then fires off the batch file for command 2. And we're going to talk about this batch files in a minute. And these batch files have the syntax that OBS is expecting to tell it to change scenes, change of the scene, or multiple steps. And we're going to show it can actually fire off a sequence. One command can fire off a whole sequence of events that OBS will follow. But that's how it works. Every command runs, or every slideshow change runs this sequence, and we've had very, very good success with it. So I'm going to show you what the sequence looks like. So what you'll see right here is, again, the notes, presentation notes of the slide, but you're going to see the word CMD dash, and then there's 2 commands, 209 with a separator and a P00. As a breakdown, the command dash again says something that the OBS needs to know. 209 is the first command that becomes a batch file. So what it's saying is, hey, fire off command 209.bat and then p00.bat. So when I look at this, what I know, because we've been running it a long time, 209 means move camera 2 to preposition 9, and P00 means make the PowerPoint full screen. That's what our P00 is. P01 would be PowerPoint with camera 1, P02 with camera 2, P03, and there's a multiple ones available, but this is how we run the sequence. So now I'm going to go and show you how we make these batch files, how these were done. So now WebSockets is a free plugin, and it runs a little, if I'll open up this one here, it runs a little command sequence. So what you have here is the OBS WebSockets executing to the server that's running OBS with the password, and then it's calling scene. It calls a scene, puts a delay in, calls camera, and then delay. It's just a quick sequence of events that will happen. So you can pre-program some effects. Pull up one that has a name, for example, this one. Again, we're sending a command to the server, P01. This is the actual lyrics name. Now, if you notice, I said this is the actual scene name in OBS that we match it. You have to match it exactly, so I just copy and paste the name. And once, again, sends a command to OBS, it says, in this case, said change the scene to that camera 3 with the lyrics overlaid, which we've pre-done in OBS. The way we do we're using a little app called NOOBS, which is, again, on the OBS plugin for WebSockets. It's an app that you can run, and they allow the creation of these files a little bit easier. You can type them in manually, but it gets a little tedious, and this lets you save and import. So, for example, I could import a sequence. Oh, that's a sad one. Let's try SO1. So SO1 loads up a scene called Sermon 01, comes up, waits 10 seconds, then fades the camera 2. And a previous slide, we probably would have moved camera 2 to that position, waits 5 seconds, then brings in the name key, waits about 10 seconds, and then takes away the name key. And so what you can do is you can just fire this command once, and OBS will just follow it. The command sequence, again, is sent by batch file. So the macro calls a command window, but within the PowerPoint, you don't see anything. It's completely seamless to the user. So they don't see any windows flashing or anything that they might make them nervous. So that's kind of it is how we're doing our services at the church. So hopefully maybe that kind of give you some ideas of what you can do with yours. Take care.